Hello and thanks for joining us for today's video. We just want to remind you to check out our podcast, Into the Killing, and our new YouTube channel, Paranormally Listed, because who knows, you may be wanting to hear more of my monotone voice. In our latest episode of Into the Killing, we discussed two murders where the police had a suspect for over a decade, but they had to wait for advancements in technology to finally close the cases. Our latest video from Paranormally Listed is about three celebrities who had encounters with UFOs. What celebrities are those? You'll have to check out the video to find out. You can find a link to both Into the Killing and Paranormally Listed in the description box below this video. But just before we start today's video, we want to talk about our wonderful, longtime sponsor, Magellan TV. At the end of the day, when my brain hasn't completely turned off for the day, I like to watch a documentary on Magellan TV. Last night, I was scanning their new releases section, and I came across a series called Murder Maps. It's a really fascinating series, and I can't wait to watch another episode. Each episode examines a notorious murder or a series of murders that happened in London, England. If you're a history buff and a fan of true crime, this is a series you have to watch. Murder Maps has an amazing amount of detail about each case, and the reenactments are well acted. Also, Murder Maps is one of many documentaries that are available in stunning 4K. The 9 episodes of Murder Maps is just some of the new material that was recently added to Magellan TV. Magellan TV adds 15 to 20 hours of new material every week, and they already have a catalog of over 3,000 documentaries. Right now, you can check out Murder Maps and the rest of their documentaries for free, because Magellan TV is offering criminally listed viewers a month of free service. To get this amazing offer, go to try.magellantv.com/criminally listed. So please check out Magellan TV today, because you'll find something great to watch, and you'll be supporting Criminally Listed in the process. Number 3. Marcello Fabian Piccolo. In 2007, Marcello Fabian Piccolo was a music teacher at his school in Merlo, Argentina. Merlo is a city in the greater Buenos Aires urban area. In October 2007, a 4-year-old accused him of sexually touching him. After the allegation, 6 more students between the ages of 3 and 8 came forward. They also said that Piccolo inappropriately touched them. He was arrested and placed in prison, but he was released after 9 months and placed under house arrest. But this led to a series of protests. The protesters wore shirts and held up signs that read, "With the children, no." Then, they burned his house down. So he went back to jail while he awaited his trial. A judge decided that 5 of the 7 cases would be heard in court. In 2010, out of the 5 cases, he was convicted of 1. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison, but his sentence was drastically reduced, and he ended up only serving 4 years in prison. After leaving prison, he got a job with the little orchestra of Moran as a substitute trumpet player. Moran is another city in the Buenos Aires metro area, about 7 miles from Merlo. He was made a permanent member of the orchestra in May 2016. On October 30th, 2016, the orchestra was playing in the Cathedral of Moran. Suddenly, a group of adults burst into the church. A few of them shouted, "There is a pedophile and a rapist in the church, and he is playing in this orchestra." Several of them were wearing t-shirts that read, "With the children, no." They also hung up posters in the church with the same slogan. Then they advanced on 42-year-old Marcello Fabian Piccolo. He tried to run out of the door behind the altar, but someone got there first and locked it. Then the crowd swarmed him. One man took his trumpet and beat him with it. They beat him until blood came out of his mouth. Several people tried to protect Piccolo, and they were injured as well. By the time the priest had entered the church, the mob had left. The priest stayed with Piccolo, who was unconscious and badly battered. The police were called, and officers were there quickly because the station was only a block from the church. However, there were not many clues besides eyewitness accounts. Piccolo's trumpet was missing, and it has never been found. 42-year-old Marcello Fabio Piccolo was taken to the hospital. He stayed in a coma for a month and then died in the hospital. No arrests have ever been made in the case. Number 2. Katie Benson. In 1991, 63-year-old Edward Benson and his 60-year-old wife, Katie, lived in West Milton, Ohio. West Milton is a small village with a population of just over 4,000 people. The couple had 7 children and many grandchildren. Katie had been a homemaker. Edward had health issues, so he couldn't work. But he did play banjo in a bluegrass band. On May 22, 1991, at 5 a.m., Edward called 911. He said that his wife needed paramedics. He then called his lawyer. When the first responders arrived, Edward's lawyer was already at the couple's home, and he advised Edward not to answer any questions. Inside the couple's house, the police found what they described as a gruesome crime scene. 60-year-old Katie had suffered severe head wounds. 2 bloody banjos were found near her. 60-year-old Katie Benson was placed in the ambulance, but she died on the way to the hospital. The police concluded that Edward started beating Katie in the head with one of the banjos. When the banjo broke, he picked up another one and continued to beat her in the head. Once he was done, he called 911. The lead investigator said, "I've been an officer for 30 years, and it's the first banjo killing I've seen." What the police didn't know was why Edward killed his wife of several decades. The police had been called to their home because of domestic disputes, but not in the last few years. The neighbors did not hear any arguments in the time leading up to the murder. 5 months after the murder, a judge ruled that Edward was incompetent to stand trial. He committed him to a psychiatric hospital for at least 15 months. Edward Benson never stood trial for murder. He died at the age of 65 in October 1993, 2.5 years after the murder. He was buried in a different cemetery than the wife he murdered. Number 1. Danny Kirk Sr. Forest Hill is a suburb of Fort Worth, Texas. In 2011, it had a population of about 12,000 people. It was home to 53-year-old Danny Kirk Sr. and his family. Kirk was the founder and pastor of the Greater Sweet Home Missionary Baptist Church. He started the church in a strip mall in 1995. The church grew, and years later, a red brick church was constructed. Kirk was also an unofficial volunteer chaplain for a local high school football team. By all accounts, Reverend Kirk was a hard-working and good man. On October 29, 2011, 53-year-old Danny Kirk was at church with the church's secretary and the custodian. Suddenly, a car slammed into the side of the church. A man got out of the car and chased Kirk into the music room. Once in the room, the man started beating Kirk with an electric guitar. The church's secretary locked herself in the office and called 911. The custodian rushed to the music room, and he was also attacked. The police arrived, and at gunpoint, they ordered the attacker to stop. But he ignored the officers. So they shot him with a taser, and he finally stopped. They handcuffed him and put him in the back of a police cruiser. The officers provided first aid to Reverend Kirk and the custodian until paramedics arrived. When the paramedics arrived, they were both taken to the hospital. About 10 minutes after the attacker was placed in the back seat, an officer checked on him and discovered he wasn't breathing. He was also taken to the hospital. The custodian was not too badly injured. Sadly, 53-year-old Reverend Danny Kirk Sr. was pronounced dead at the hospital. So was his killer. The police identified him as 33-year-old Derek Bordeaux. Bordeaux was married and had 4 children. He worked as a truck driver. He was not a member of Kirk's congregation, but he had attended several services there. He did not know Kirk or have any personal connection to him. Bordeaux had a criminal record, which included violence. In 1999, he was convicted of possession of a controlled substance, and he was sentenced to 120 days in jail. The following year, he was sentenced to 45 days in jail for assaulting a family member. In 2004, he was sentenced to 35 days in jail for driving drunk. Later that same year, Bordeaux pleaded guilty to aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He shot a man he said owed him money. The man survived the shooting. Bordeaux was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Bordeaux's family said he had never previously shown signs of mental illness. But in the week leading up to Reverend Kirk's murder, Bordeaux's family said he was acting very strangely. It was then clear to his family that he was mentally ill. He was very jittery, and he would talk on the phone with his dead grandmother. He kept telling his brother that someone had stuck him with a needle. When his brother asked him who had stuck him, he would say, "Nobody." Bordeaux was also convinced that someone was coming to kill him. His family encouraged him to check himself into a hospital, but he refused. It's not clear why he chose to attack Reverend Danny Kirk. An autopsy was performed on Bordeaux's body. Turned out that he was high on phencyclidine, also known as PCP or angel dust. PCP is a powerful, dissociative, hallucinogenic drug that can have mind-altering effects. PCP would explain Bordeaux's erratic behavior in the week leading up to Kirk's murder and his death. Bordeaux's cause of death was from PCP ingestion. The Greater Sweet Home Missionary Baptist Church did not die with Danny Kirk Sr. Another founding member took over as pastor, and the church is still in operation. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. Our latest video is about 3 celebrity UFO encounters. You can find a link to the channel on the screen now and in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.